Welcome back, everyone, to Sip and Talk.
Great to be here again.
So today we're diving into something pretty fascinating, actually. It starts with a question about Taiwan.
Right. The question of why people there seem to, well, love complaining about their government so much.
Exactly. It seems like a national pastime.
Yeah.
But it actually opens up these huge topics, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Democracy, freedom.
Oh, absolutely. And we're even going to get into some really mind-bending thought experiments later on, the kind our listeners really enjoy.
Yeah, and we have to give a big thank you to our friend Micky for sparking this whole idea. Your insights are always top-notch.
Seriously, great inspiration. So, okay, we've basically got 4 main areas we want to explore today, building off that initial question.
Lay it out for us.
First up, we're looking at that whole phenomenon in Taiwan, summed up by the phrase, garbage doesn't differentiate blue or green. Why the constant criticism?
Okay, sounds intriguing.
Then
we shift focus a bit to ask a really important, maybe slightly sobering question. Is Hong Kong doing okay, looking at the changes there since 2020? Right? That's been on a lot of people's minds. It's a crucial comparison point, I think.
Definitely. And that sets the stage for our thought experiments. First, from a Taiwanese perspective, what if China actually ruled Taiwan completely?
Oof, that's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Really imagining what that reality would feel like.
It is. And then we flip it the inverse. What if China became another Taiwan? What if democracy took root there?
Wow, okay. That's the big one, the world-changing hypothetical.
Exactly. So, these are big, sensitive topics.
For sure.
And our approach, as always, is just to explore them with an open mind, look at the facts presented, the analyses we've seen.
And encourage you, listening, to think for yourself. We're not here to take sides.
Not at all. It's about understanding different perspectives on these really complex issues.
All right, let's jump in. Section 1. Garbage doesn't differentiate blue or green. Why do Taiwanese love to scold the government?
It really is something you notice almost immediately if you spend time in Taiwan. It's not just occasional grumbling.
No, it feels constant, almost like a ritual, like grabbing bubble tea or, that amazing salty crispy chicken. It's just part of the fabric.
That's a perfect analogy. And it's so widespread. It's not like only supporters of the opposition party complain.
Oh, no, not at all. It feels totally nonpartisan. The president, the ministers, right down to the local village chief, everyone's fair game.
You hear it all the time. Things like, the government is so stupid. Or that classic comparison.
The blue are corrupt, the green are rotten.
It's all the same whoever's in charge. Yeah, that one.
And the ultimate phrase, the title for this section, garbage doesn't differentiate blue or green. Just collect it all.
It's just brilliant, isn't it? It perfectly captures that sense of equal opportunity cynicism toward all politicians.
It really does. And it's not just generic complaints. People get pretty creative, right?
Oh, yeah. There's that mocking style, like saying, politicians only know how to campaign, not how to do actual work.
Implying it's all talk, promises, but no follow-through once they're in office.
Exactly. It taps into that deep-seated feeling that maybe they're better at performance than governance.
And you mentioned the nonpartisan thing. That comes through really strongly when people say stuff like,
the DPP is just as rotten as the KMT. You hear that a lot.
Yeah, it's not about party loyalty then. It's a critique of the whole system, or at least the players in it.
It suggests a real disillusionment that goes beyond just one party's failings.
Sometimes it gets almost philosophical, doesn't it? That saying about ideals getting lost.
Or the one like, those who dream of changing the world eventually get absorbed by political parties.
Yeah, that's a bit sad, actually. Like, the system itself corrupts or compromises even the best intentions. A very cynical take.
It is, a sort of resignation to the realities of power politics.
And my absolute favorite, because it's just so visceral and relatable, seeing the news just makes me want to flip the table.
Everyone feels that sometimes, right?
Totally. But then they add that little kicker, like, is it just me? Am I losing it? Or are you guys in government just that good at causing chaos?
It perfectly captures that feeling of being overwhelmed, frustrated, but also maybe seeing the dark humor in it all.
So, okay, all this complaining, this constant scolding, it sounds exhausting, but you're saying it's actually good.
Well, maybe not good in the sense of being pleasant, but it's a sign of something healthy, yes. It's not just noise.
How so?
It's actually a hallmark of a vibrant, mature democracy. Taiwan consistently ranks super high. You know?
I saw that. Top in Asia in the 2024 Economist Democracy Index, right?
Exactly. So this ability to openly criticize, to vent, to hold leaders' feet to the fire publicly, that's fundamental. It's a form of participation.
A pressure valve, maybe?
Precisely. Imagine if people couldn't do that. If all that frustration was bottled up, that's often where real instability brews. Think about places where dissent is crushed. The anger is still there, just simmering.
That makes a lot of sense. So the noise is actually a sign of freedom working.
In many ways, yes. And you have to remember Taiwan's history here. It wasn't always like this.
Right, the martial law period.
Yeah.
Decades long, wasn't it?
Almost 40 years, from 49 to 87. And during that time, dissent was absolutely suppressed. Criticizing the government was dangerous.
So when that ended, it must have been like a floodgate opening.
Completely. An explosion of free speech. People finally learned to say what they feel without fear. Public criticism became this crucial outlet, a way to express political views, and maybe a way to ensure that level of suppression never returned.
So it's a hard one, right? They're exercising vigorously.
Makes sense. And the political system itself encourages it, in a way.
How do you mean? The constant elections?
Yeah, exactly. Major elections every 2 years. That keeps politics front and center all the time.
True. You can't escape it. It's always election season, or recovering from one or gearing up for the next.
Which means political discussions are everywhere. High public participation, high scrutiny.
And therefore, high levels of criticism. If you're always talking about politics, you're always finding things to critique.
It naturally follows. And the data backs this feeling up, you know.
Yeah.
It's not just anecdotes.
Okay, hit me with some numbers. How bad is the trust level?
Well, according to the Taiwan Public Opinion Foundation in 2023, trust in the government across all parties hovered around only 40%.
40%? That seems low.
It is relatively low compared to some other democracies.
Right.
And low trust definitely fuels vocal dissatisfaction. If you don't trust them, you'll call them out more readily.
And social media just pours gasoline on that fire, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's a massive amplifier. Think about platforms like PTT or Dcard. They're huge over there.
Like Taiwan's Reddit or something.
Kind of, yeah. And analysis shows political discussions on these platforms, plus Facebook, often have over 50% of the content focused on criticizing the government.
Wow, over half.
Yep, it's pervasive. People even jokingly blame the government for bad weather sometimes. It shows how ingrained the habit is.
Okay, so general trust is low. What about specific institutions like the legislature or the parties themselves?
Even worse, actually. The 2022 World Values Survey found public confidence in the legislature was just 27.6%.
Ouch, less than a third.
And in political parties, only 22.4%.
Yikes. So people don't trust the system or the players very much.
It points to significant discontent with the institutions themselves, yeah. A real desire for more accountability.
Which brings us back to garbage doesn't differentiate blue or green. It really isn't just a saying.
No, it reflects a genuine cross-party dissatisfaction. You see online posts using that exact garbage analogy to criticize figures from all sides, like Ko Wen-ju when he seemed inconsistent. It shows the feeling transcends party lines.
And this general distrust is still very much alive in debates about the economy, social welfare.
Absolutely. It underpins a lot of the current political discourse. It's the sound of a very active, very critical democracy in action.
Okay, that paints a really clear picture of Taiwan. Vibrant, noisy, maybe a bit cynical, but fundamentally democratic. Now let's pivot.
To Hong Kong.
Yeah. The question we pose is Hong Kong doing okay? This requires a hard look at what's happened recently.
It does, and we need to start with the baseline. One country, two systems. That was the promise back in 1997.
Right, Hong Kong gets handed back to China, but keeps its own systems, high degree of autonomy, until 2047. That was the deal.
That was the deal, a unique model, but then came 2020.
And national security law, the NSL.
Exactly, and that was the turning point, a massive shift away from that promised autonomy.
So the argument now is that one country, two systems, as it was understood, is basically over.
That's the core argument, supported by a lot of evidence. Hong Kong's legal and political systems are increasingly aligning with mainland China. We're seeing political suppression, shrinking freedoms, economic uncertainty. It's not opinion, it's documented fact.
Let's break that down. Politically, what happened to the opposition? Where did they go?
They've been systematically removed. Since 2021, there's this principle of patriots govern Hong Kong.
Meaning only people loyal to Beijing can run for office.
Essentially, yes. It's completely reshaped elections for the Legislative Council, the district councils. Opposition voices have been purged.
Any concrete examples of how effective that's been?
Look at the 2023 district council elections. Not a single opposition candidate even got nominated. Zero. That's unprecedented. It shows the system is designed to exclude them.
Wow. So participation is restricted, What about the people who were active in the pro-democracy movement before?
Many have been arrested and jailed. The Hong Kong 47 case is probably the most high profile.
Those were the activists involved in the primary election, right?
Yeah, arrested for conspiracy to subvert state power just for organizing an unofficial primary. Average sentences are over 4 years. Some were just released around May 2025.
And big names, too.
Oh, yes. People like Jimmy Lai, the media owner of Apple Daily, activist Joshua Wong. They're imprisoned. It sends a very clear message.
A chilling message, which must devastate freedom of speech and the media, which were such defining features of Hong Kong.
Profoundly. The NSL itself is a huge part of that. Since it came in, at least 290 arrests under it, over 1,000 cases implicated.
And the law is vague, right? So it can be applied broadly.
Extremely broad definitions of subversion, collusion, things like that. It means peaceful expression, normal civic activity can be criminalized. Holding the wrong book could mean years in prison.
That's terrifying. What about the newspapers and online sites that were critical?
Many are gone. Apple Daily, forced closure. Stand News, closed. Editor jailed for 21 months. Citizen News also ceased operations, citing the environment.
So the independent voices are just silenced.
Largely. Over 900 journalists lost their jobs. There's a climate of fear, intense self-censorship among those remaining. Pro-Beijing outlets now dominate.
And this extends beyond media, into schools, public spaces.
Yes, the NSL's reach is deep. National security education is now part of the school curriculum.
Brainwashing, some call it.
That's the concern raised by critics, yes. Officials deny it, of course, framing it as civic responsibility, but it's controversial. Public art spaces cancel events by opposition groups. Critical bookstores are vanishing. Libraries are removing books.
It sounds like an attempt to control the entire narrative,
Yeah.
reshape public thought.
That appears to be the goal, yes. Aligning Hong Kong's public sphere with mainland directives.
Okay, so politically, freedom-wise, it's a grim picture. What about the economy? Hong Kong was this global financial engine. Is it still running?
It's complicated. There was some GDP growth, 3.1% in Q1 2025, driven by exports and investment.
So not collapsing?
Not collapsing, but there are signs of stress. Private consumption saw a slight dip, and the budget for 2025-26 projects a big deficit, HK $87.2 billion.
That's significant. How are they managing that?
They're planning to cut 10,000 civil service jobs. That's a major belt-tightening move.
So growth in some areas, but fiscal pressure too? What about confidence indicators like the property market?
The property market looks weak. Commercial land sales were paused. Office vacancy rates are high. Developers are pulling back on new projects. It signals nervousness.
And the international view, talent, capital. Hong Kong thrived on being open and connected.
That's where the real concerns lie. International human rights reports from groups like Freedom House, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, they consistently paint a picture of declining freedoms.
And that has consequences.
Definitely. A significant outflow of talent and capital. Many Hong Kongers are emigrating, especially to the UK, using those BNO visa schemes.
So a brain drain.
A noticeable one, yes. Even efforts to attract new talent, like the Elite Pass, haven't been hugely successful. It shows the environment is seen as challenging.
Any other signs of its changing status?
Yeah, big ones. The U.S. now treats Hong Kong the same as mainland China for export controls. That's a major policy shift reflecting lost autonomy. And the Heritage Foundation kicked Hong Kong off its freest economies list, a title it held for years.
Wow. That's symbolic, but also has real-world implications.
Absolutely. It signals a fundamental change in how the world perceives Hong Kong's standing and its integration into the mainland system.
So wrapping up this section on Hong Kong, is it doing okay? How do we answer that?
It's fundamentally transformed. The one country, two systems of the past is gone in spirit and practice. While the economy hasn't imploded, the political clampdown and erosion of freedoms are undeniable.
So the answer depends on your priorities.
Exactly. If you prioritize economic stability above all, you might find some positives. But if you value political freedom, civil liberties, freedom of speech, then the answer is likely a clear no. The city's very essence has changed.
That's a really clear, if sobering, summary. And it sets up our next section perfectly, the thought experiment.
The first one, what if China ruled Taiwan? Imagining that scenario from a Taiwanese perspective.
This is tough, but important to consider given the geopolitical tensions. So let's imagine complete annexation. Taiwan becomes a Chinese province, maybe even more tightly controlled than Hong Kong. What's the first thing that happens?
Politically, it would be swift and brutal. A complete purge.
Meaning?
Democratic parties, the DPP, New Power Party, Taiwan State Building Party labeled Taiwan Independence Forces, and banned or dissolved instantly.
What about the KMT or TPP? They're not pro-independence.
They'd likely be marginalized, maybe a few pro-Beijing moderates allowed to exist as symbolic puppets with no real power, just for show.
And the leaders? President Lai, former President Tsai, prominent legislators.
They'd likely face charges under a new Taiwanese NSL for subversion or separatism, similar to the Hong Kong 47, imprisonment, effectively decapitating the democratic leadership.
Chilling. Okay, so political structure's gone. What about the average person's ability to speak out? That scolding the government culture.
Gone, replaced by silence and surveillance. Popular forums like PTT, Dcard, local YouTube channels, independent news shut down or absorbed into state media mouthpieces.
You couldn't even complain about a delayed train anymore.
Not safely. Criticizing the government becomes dangerous. Private line chats monitored. Using the wrong sticker could get you flagged. Complaining about infrastructure might be twisted into defaming national construction. News broadcasts end with, "Thank the party."
Total information control and propaganda would ramp up.
Massively. Rewriting history in schools. Comfort women become voluntary laborers. Japanese rule becomes pure tyranny. Daily mandatory viewing of China's main news broadcast, flag raising, studying core socialist values.
What about language and culture? Taiwanese, Hakka.
Suppressed. Mandarin proficiency tests enforced for everything, just like policies seen in Xinjiang or Hong Kong. It's cultural cleansing, homogenization.
And physically, the island itself would change. Demographics?
Oh, yes. Expect a large influx of mainland Chinese, especially from coastal provinces like Fujian. Incentivize strategic resettlement.
Changing the population mix. What does that do to daily life?
Housing, shops, land rapidly bought up, inflating the property market. Signs switch to simplified characters. Your neighbors are suddenly from Beijing or Guizhou. An authentic Chongqing hot pot opens downstairs. The local flavor erodes.
And for those who resisted in the past, Sunflower Movement participants, Hong Kong supporters.
Retribution. Even for past actions, they'd be targeted under the new security laws. Rumors of missing lists would start.
And missing, meaning?
People disappearing, sent to learning centers, maybe on Kinmen or in Hualien. Basically re-education camps, like in Xinjiang, designed to break dissent through forced indoctrination.
This is sounding more and more like a total loss of identity and freedom. What about travel? Passports?
Taiwanese passports abolished, replaced with PRC ID cards and passports. Travel abroad needs approval from Chinese public security trips to Japan or the U.S. become extremely difficult. Overseas Taiwanese pressured to swear loyalty or lose their household registration.
And the economy? Taiwan's tech sector, TSMC.
Devastated. Taiwan becomes a periphery of China's domestic market, not Asia's Silicon Valley. TSMC and other key industries likely nationalized, integrated into Chinese state-owned enterprises. Western firms like ASML might pull out, global supply chains disrupted.
And for the average worker?
Direct competition with lower-wage mainland labor. Wages could plummet maybe NT $40,000 a month down to NT $25,000, plus mandatory party classes at work. A huge drop in living standards.
Are there other societal changes we haven't touched on?
So many. China's hukou household registration system imposed, potentially making Taiwanese third-class citizens. Religious freedom curtailed monasteries like Foguangshan scrutinized. Practices forced to align with socialist core values.
Arts, courts, military.
Films need approval from the propaganda department. Golden Horse Awards become a cross-strait cultural fusion event. Independent courts abolished, replaced by a party-controlled Taiwan High People's Court. Taiwan's military dissolved, replaced by the PLA's Taiwan garrison.
It's hard to even comprehend the psychological impact of all this.
It would be immense. A deep feeling of colonization, loss of control, a profound identity crisis. Are we still Taiwanese? And a pervasive chilling effect, fear of speaking, fear of being watched, fear of neighbors. Taiwanese culture becomes a memory.
You also mentioned a specific grim thought experiment within this, food safety.
Right. It's a very practical daily life concern. China has a troubled history with food safety scandals.
Gutter oil, melamine in milk.
Exactly. So imagine large Chinese food companies entering Taiwan with much looser oversight. Those kinds of unsafe products, fake seasonings, high pesticide produce could start appearing quietly.
And Taiwan's own Food and Drug Administration.
merged into China's system, losing its independence and teeth, no more rigorous local oversight.
What if someone tries to expose it? A citizen journalist.
They'd be accused of spreading rumors or defaming a national enterprise, huge lawsuits, criminal charges. We've seen bloggers sued by big Chinese companies like BYD and Huawei for criticism. The same would happen.
So the media couldn't report it either.
No way. The remaining news channels become state media branches. Complaining about moldy school lunches gets spun as needing to positively understand the supplier's difficulties. Safety concerns are ignored for stability.
It highlights that fundamental clash. China's stability above all versus Taiwan's expectation of accountability and transparency.
Exactly. Taiwanese would ask, can't we even talk about poison in our food? The official response might be, you're fabricating rumors, causing trouble.
And there is...
Unsafe food likely keeps circulating because problems aren't acknowledged. Criticism goes underground or leads to emigration. Young people learn silence. Older people mourn lost platforms like Baoliao Gongsha, the whistleblower site. The ability to demand basic safety vanishes.
This whole scenario is deeply unsettling. It leaves you wondering.
Would people just become numb? Adapt to the silence?
Or would resistance continue underground? Through satire, secret groups.
And ultimately, if you can't even discuss food safety or healthcare openly, what freedoms are actually left?
A very bleak picture. Okay, let's take a deep breath and flip this entirely.
Yes, let's move to the inverse hypothetical, the exciting one.
What if China became another Taiwan? What if democracy, freedom, transparency took root on the mainland?
Now that is a revolutionary thought, a complete paradigm shift for China and the world. Where do we even start?
Politically, right? The shift from party governs all to people rule.
Exactly. Imagine China transitioning from one-party dictatorship to an open, multi-party system. Leaders chosen through real competitive elections, like in Taiwan.
So no more rubber stamp legislature. Real accountability.
Yes. An end to the opaque government. Independent journalists exposing corruption. A real parliament holding the government accountable. Corrupt officials investigated and removed transparently.
And free speech. The Great Firewall.
The Great Firewall comes down. Google, YouTube, Wikipedia, freely accessible. Imagine the explosion of information. Media becomes independent. People can criticize the government without fear.
And term limits. No more leader-for-life situations.
Fixed presidential terms become the norm. Regular rotation of parties based on elections.
Can you paint a picture of what that might look like?
Imagine the Communist Party having to compete like the KMT or DPP. Televised debates. Picture, say, Wang Honing debating Hu Zhizhen, or maybe even a reformed Carrie Lam for president in 2024. It's wild to think about.
Mind-boggling. Okay, so free speech, free information. What about history?
Students could finally learn the truth about Tiananmen Square, the Cultural Revolution, the Uyghur situation. No more censorship or distortion. An honest national reckoning.
And social media. Weibo.
Weibo, as we know it, might fade, replaced by something like a Chinese D-card plus PTT. Truly open forums where people freely critique policy, debate issues without fear of deletion or the dreaded invitation for tea. Imagine freely saying, this COVID policy was nuts, online.
The collective voice of a billion people unleashed. Okay, economy. Less focus on massive face projects.
Definitely. A shift to a people-centric model like Taiwan's. Instead of pouring money into Belt and Road or foreign scholarships for soft power.
Investing in universal healthcare and basic education at home.
Precisely. Prioritizing the population's well-being. Instead of questionable high-speed rail to nowhere, you subsidize rural clinics, community development.
What about the real estate bubble?
Government steps in to curb speculation, strengthen social housing, make homes affordable, and budgets become transparent.
Citizens can see where the money goes. Imagine redirecting that stability maintenance budget.
That estimated 700 billion RMB annually. If that went to grassroots healthcare, every township could have a modern hospital. Think of the trust that would build.
Huge. And social justice. The end of elite privilege.
Absolutely. Dismantle the red second-generation special treatment, the exclusive supply systems, implement a Sunshine Act like Taiwan's officials must disclose their assets, level the playing field.
What about work culture? The 996 nightmare.
No longer tolerated. Real labor unions with power to bargain collectively, protect workers' rights. And imagine university admissions, even to Harvard, based purely on merit, not family connections, even for the kids of billionaires like Jack Ma.
This democratic China sounds like an absolute powerhouse. What potential does it unlock?
Immense potential. It becomes the world's strongest domestic market, a hub of innovation like Silicon Valley, but bigger, fueled by free research. Asia's most efficient infrastructure, freed from corruption.
And its cultural influence.
Genuine soft power, its rich heritage influencing the world authentically, not through propaganda. Imagine a China that's like Asia's America for dynamism, German efficiency for infrastructure, and Nordic social welfare. A hybrid superpower for good.
How does this reshape the world?
Geopolitically, it's transformative. It could accelerate democratization across Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar might follow.
And Taiwan.
The cross-strait relationship fundamentally changes. Maybe peaceful reunification, maybe a federal system based on mutual respect, because the core ideological conflict disappears.
And the U.S.-China rivalry?
It could shift to collaboration, working together on climate change, human rights, AI governance. Imagine that. A complete reshaping of global politics from confrontation to partnership.
It's an incredibly hopeful vision, but the hurdles. Let's be realistic. How could this possibly happen?
The hurdles are massive. First, you'd need a huge civic awakening among the Chinese people, breaking free from decades of propaganda.
A mental shift for over 1 billion people.
Exactly. Second, the Communist Party would either have to voluntarily transform itself, which seems incredibly unlikely, or collapse entirely.
Which could be chaotic in itself.
Very possibly. And third, you'd need a constant flow of outside information and cultural freedom to sustain that civic awakening and prevent backsliding.
So it's not a quick fix. The transition itself could be messy.
Extremely messy. Short-term chaos impacting the global economy is possible. Elites would resist fiercely. Managing such a vast, diverse country democratically, especially regions like Tibet and Xinjiang with deep historical grievances, would be incredibly challenging. Separatist movements could emerge.
So an inspiring dream, but fraught with immense challenges.
Precisely. It's the ultimate what if.
Wow. What an exploration. We started with Taiwanese complaining about garbage collection, basically.
And ended up redrawing the map of global power and imagining radically different futures.
It really shows how interconnected everything is and how much perspective matters. Understanding why people criticize, what happens when they can't, and what could happen if freedom expands. It's crucial.
We saw how criticism can be a sign of health, how its absence can mask deep problems like in Hong Kong, and the sheer potential locked away that could be unleashed, as in our China thought experiment.
So the final thought we want to leave you with today is this. Think about the role of individual courage.
Yeah. Whether it's the courage to speak out when something's wrong, even if it's just locally.
Or the courage to imagine and push for big, fundamental changes. What small actions today, by ordinary people, could actually nudge things towards these better, freer futures we've imagined?
That's a powerful question to sit with. It really brings it back to the individual level, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us on this pretty intense journey today on Sip and Talk.
We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did putting it together.
If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe to Sip and Talk wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next exploration.
And a special shout out again to our friend Micky for the fantastic inspiration for this topic. Definitely check out Micky's YouTube channel too. Fun memes, music, wine tasting, travel vlogs. Good stuff over there.
Absolutely. Go check it out. Until next time, thanks for listening.
See you soon.